In 2013, a small coming-of-age film titled The Way, Way Back was released. The independent movie was made on a budget of $5 million and ended up being a special selection at the Sundance Film Festival. It turned out to be one of the most popular films at the festival that year. The Way, Way Back stars Liam James as a 14-year-old named Duncan who is struggling to find his place in the world after his parents got a divorce and started seeing other people. He ends up being forced to spend the summer at a beach house with his mom and her new boyfriend, who is an absolute prick. Along the way, he ends up landing a part-time shift at a local water park where he starts to find an escape from his own personal struggles. I guess before I dive too far into the movie, it doesn't hurt to mention this little film has a cast with a few names I'm guessing you have probably heard of. Steve Carell, Toni Collette, Allison Janney, AnnaSophia Robb, Maya Rudolph, and Sam Rockwell. So, without further ado, let's take a look at it. Right off the bat, I think the tone of this movie is really interesting, and it is set from the opening scene. Duncan is shown riding in the back of a station wagon when his mom's new boyfriend Trent, played by Steve Carell, asks him what he would rate himself out of 10. Duncan is reluctant to respond, but musters out a 6 after being prodded a few times. Trent then says he sees Duncan more like a 3, and he could bump himself up to a 6 if he would just put himself out there more. It is all done in the rudest way possible, but the sheer awkwardness of the situation is almost comical to us as viewers. That is really how most of this movie feels to me. It's overall kind of a depressing movie when you look at it all from the characters' situations, but there's this comedic flair to all of the chaos. I compare the tone of this movie to Sofia Coppola's 1999 film, The Virgin Suicides. Although the ending of that film is much more sad, both of the films utilize awkward and sometimes sad elements to add to the comedic moments of the film. The Way, Way Back is also a film that rarely shifts its tone. For every upbeat or comedic scene, there is a negative moment that directly follows it. I really like this because it makes you feel you're more stuck in this never-ending loop with Duncan. Every time he seems to be doing something that makes him happier or benefits him, there is something there to drag him back down again. It seems like most coming-of-age movies have a sad beginning, a middle where everything seems to be figured out but conflict arises, followed by an ending where everything is resolved. This film is pretty much a flat line, even including the conclusion, which is something I'll talk about later in this video. But in all honesty, I really enjoyed the tone of this movie. Not all films need to end in sunshine and rainbows, or on the flip side, super depressing. Something about having a middling tone that carries into the conclusion just makes the film seem more realistic and relatable. I honestly prefer a more realistic tone when it comes to movies in a genre like coming of age. It makes the film just kind of all that more grounded. I commend the writers Jim Rash and Nate Faxon for creating a realistic tone for this movie. While I stated in the intro this movie is about the main character Duncan and the struggles he is facing, there's a lot more to this film than just that. The wide variety of secondary characters are thoroughly explored in this movie. By the end, it feels like we personally know something about every single person that appears in the movie and the different things they are struggling with or regretting. This is super nice because Duncan on his own really is a lackluster main character. The first half of this movie honestly feels kind of difficult to connect with Duncan as we know so little about him. All of these other characters bring emotions out of Duncan through their actions, which in turn allows us to grow closer to him. This is done through the beautifully written script and star-studded cast that gives great performances. Sam Rockwell playing the laid-back, fun-loving owner of the water park has to be my favorite of the supporting characters. He is really the character that understands where Duncan is at and forces him out of his shell. Without Owen, this film wouldn't progress at all and would be lacking quite a bit in the comedy department. He is constantly cracking jokes, interacting with others, and forcing Duncan out of his comfort zone. As the film moves along though, we find that he isn't super happy with his life and feels like he is just stuck running this water park in a little rundown summer vacation town. When Duncan starts to look up to Owen, he makes sure to tell him that there is always something more to life than what is just bringing you peace in the moment. Owen's speech to Duncan at the top of the water slide at the ending of the film is really the most touching moment of the film and shows the duality to Rockwell's character. I personally think Owen is the best character in the film, and this movie would not be as good without Sam Rockwell's amazing performance. The other supporting character I feel plays a major role is Trent, played by Steve Carell. Carell gives a performance we don't normally get out of him. He's a douchey, middle-aged single guy that is basically just taking advantage of Duncan's mom, Pam. Trent is shown cheating on Pam, constantly contradicting himself, and belittling Duncan. Every scene he is in is awkwardly painful to watch just because his character is so full of himself, and we all definitely know someone just like him in real life. Trent is also one of the more consistent characters in the film. He never really has an arc, he just stays this bitter, controlling state while we watch pretty much every other character grow around him while he gets left behind. Trent is overall just a really nice antagonist, and I love seeing Carell absolutely nail a non-comedic role in a movie. Toni Collette playing Duncan's mom Pam also gave a fantastic performance as usual. Pam is a character that is seemingly stuck for the majority of the movie until she starts to realize that Trent is treating her like trash and Duncan is slowly starting to drift away from her. It is super heartwarming for her at the end to see what Duncan had been up to while he was sneaking away most days to the water park, and kind of uses this discovery as motivation to get away from Trent. I think it is a very nice portrayal of dealing with divorce, sort of settling for what life has dealt you, and a hint of failing as a parent. Through Colette's performance, we can see Pam is always stressed out, a bit on edge, and even depressed. So with the ending of Pam seeing her son being happy, along with finally cutting things off with Trent, is a really nice character arc that shows both mom and son were dealing with similar emotional battles and can now reconnect through these similar experiences. Just to mention a few other great performances in this film, Allison Janney as the drunk single mom neighbor Betty is absolutely hilarious. Every line out of her mouth is witty and extremely funny. Maya Rudolph as Sam Rockwell's love interest at the water park is super endearing and plays a nice counterpart to Rockwell's more crazy character. It was also nice to see her character talk about how she only wanted to work at the water park for one summer, but ended up getting stuck there, to kind of add to this overall message of always continuing to pursue the best version of yourself. Then finally, AnnaSophia Robb playing Susanna as Duncan's love interest. She is someone who is in a similar boat as Duncan, but she has just a little bit more figured out about life than he does, and helps him further break out of the slump he finds himself in. All of these supporting characters are just fantastically written, and the performances are just as good as the names connected to them suggest. I can really tell everyone who worked on this movie deeply cared about it, and we are left with an absolutely fantastic film that I cannot praise enough. Having this many great supporting characters is just something you don't get to see all too often in film, let alone a smaller production such as this one. I think my favorite part of the film has to be the ending though. His mom crawling over the seats to sit with him in the back of the station wagon is a very blunt but simple ending to the story. There is still a lot left unanswered that doesn't make the final shot as happy as it may seem though. We aren't sure if Duncan will ever make it back to the water park. We also don't know if he'll ever get to be with Susanna again. So while we are super happy that Duncan has gained confidence in himself and got to live life to the fullest over a short summer vacation, we can't help but feel sad that this is all being taken away from him as soon as he got it. But that's sort of the ending this film seemed to be shooting for. Duncan doesn't get the fairy tale ending, but it concludes with him feeling better about where he currently is at in life. The movie is more of a reassurance that we are all dealing with things, but if we focus on ourselves, we can turn our futures around. I feel this is the overall message of the movie, because his mom joining him in the back also symbolizes she no longer needs a relationship to feel not alone. She has herself and Duncan to get her through these rough times. It is an ending that does leave some loose ends hanging, but with how realistic this film is portrayed, it makes us as an audience feel that these characters' lives will continue long after the credits roll. The Way, Way Back is a wonderful coming-of-age film. The atypical lead character, paired with the well-written, star-studded supporting cast, leaves us with a heartwarming story about the struggles of the teenage years. Never once does the film feel overwhelming with its theming and ideas, but by the end you understand how each character interaction leaves a lasting impact on the story. The film may not be groundbreaking, but it is very effective in what it set out to do and hits every emotional note almost perfectly. This is a film that needs to be in discussion when talking about the best coming-of-age movies from the 2000s so far. If you haven't seen this film already, do yourself a favor and go watch it. It is a movie most people can relate to, and it may even take you back to a time where you felt like you were personally in the way, way back. I want to thank you for checking out my review of The Way Way Back. If you enjoyed, subscribing down below, leaving a comment, and liking the video goes a long way in helping me out and helping the channel. Thank you, and have a good one, everybody.